Welcome to Important File Directory Descriptions. In this video, we are going to be running through important files and directories that can be found on a Linux system. So I've got my RTFM up over here, and then on the left side here, I have my SSH session that's open to the Linux machine in our scenario. Let's get started with this first file here, etc shadow. etc shadow contains all the hashes for the different users that are currently created on this Linux machine. You're going to see that I am a basic user, so this shouldn't work at all. Yep. Permission denied, that's exactly what I expect. I do want to show you what's in the shadow file, so let's try to run it on our local Linux machine right here. We'll do a sudo cat etc shadow, put in our password, and this is what a typical shadow file looks like. You do have password hashes for the users that have been created on this machine. I do want to mention one quick thing. Windows does not salt their password hashes. This means if two users have the same exact password, their hash is going to be exactly the same. But on Linux, these hashes are actually salted. So if two users have the same password, their hashes are going to be completely different. Typically, I'll be interacting with the etc shadow file when I'm trying to grab user hashes to throw them into Hashcat or something else, and trying to crack them to get their plaintext passwords. Next up, we have etc password, and you know, despite the name, this does not actually contain their passwords. This just gives us a list of all the users created on this machine. It even gives us their home directory and their preferred shell type. So definitely just a great command to enumerate users that are created on that machine. Maybe you can find credentials, find the admin users, just a good command to run. Next up, we have our group here. So we're going to do cat etc group. This is going to give us all the groups that have been created on our Linux machine here. Again, looking for any type of sensitive groups, administrative groups, things like that. Now we have startup services. RCD is actually the startup scripts associated with the Linux distribution. On Windows, there are a lot of different ways to persist access, like the startup folder, services, scatasks. Linux has a bunch of different methods as well, and RC is just one of those methods. So let's try to list one of these out. Let's do an ls of etc, and then we can look in here, and we'll see all the different RC files here. So these all correlate to different points in the boot up process when you would want something executed. So let's look into this RC0. Let's do ls rc0.d, and there are several files here. So these services, these scripts are going to be executed at the run level 0 of this Linux machine. And the next one here, we have cat etc hostname. Just a good way to find the hostname. You can also just run the hostname command. But hey, sometimes you don't have those environmental variables loaded up. And then you move on to your network configuration. These are just two ways you can set network information in Linux. There are other methods like using nmcli, IP commands. There's so many different options, but definitely give this a try. See if these work on your systems that you're enumerating. I'm gonna do etc network interfaces. Looks like this is where this system is getting its network configuration, so pretty cool. We can also look at etc netplan. I'm not sure if this will come up. Yeah, this doesn't even exist. So this machine has been specifically configured with etc network interfaces. Environmental variables, we'll cat etc profile. This is going to list out all the profile settings across the whole system, which is kind of cool. I don't typically dig into this one too often. You can do a cat etc apt sources.list. And when a Debian-based Linux machine goes to do its updates, it's actually going to look in this file, cat etc apt sources.list, for the specific target servers that it needs to update. So you can actually get OS information to see what version it's checking for. So in this example, you see Bullseye main. I'm running the Bullseye version of Debian. And occasionally you'll see other third-party repositories loaded in here. If the user's trying to install apps from a very specific manufacturer, they may put the repo in there as well. Any DNS information is in the etc resolve.conf file. If you do want to add a different DNS server, again, you're going to find it all here. You can see this system has a name server configured for 172.30.1.1. User bash history. I absolutely love this one. Let's ls our home directory first. Here's my username right here. So I'm just going to up arrow, and then I'm going to do an ls ali. And then sure enough, .bash history. If you ever want to try to find passwords, it's a great idea to check out that history file, especially if you're on some type of administrative user. If the admin is just flying along, you know, adding in passwords, doing their sudo commands, they may accidentally just issue a password or pass the password as some type of argument, which could get saved in that bash history. So let's try to cat out this bash history file. We'll do cat code user bash history right here, and not a lot here. After build time, I actually did go in there and have it clean out the bash history. So definitely something to keep in mind. You can edit and delete your bash history, so you may not always find a ton of stuff there. Now this is another cool pro tip, but it does have to do with our attack machine. So let me open up a new shell here, make it a little larger, and then let's cat out that user share Wireshark manu. This actually prints out all the manufacturers that are correlated to specific MAC addresses. So if you look at the beginning of this MAC address is correlated with this manufacturer. So if you're finding just random MAC addresses out there, or you want to clone and use a very specific manufacturer, if you reference this file on just any Kali distribution, you should very quickly be able to find, oh, I want to, masquerade as Cisco. I can use the beginning of this MAC address to accomplish that. One thing you always want to do on a Linux machine is try to enumerate any SSH connections and SSH keys. One common place is actually this home SSH right here. So we're going to do ls home SSH. We actually don't have anything loaded on this user, but as we escalate on this machine, you never know what you're going to find. Again, SSH keys are typically loaded into this home SSH folder. And if we do an ls on var log, this is where a ton of the different Linux logging happens. So even like Apache and some other third-party applications, they'll typically write out log files to var log. So this is a great place to look for any specific logs if you want to look for errors or even potential passwords that could be written out to these log directories. We can list out our cron files with ls var spool cron. There are a bunch of different locations for cron tabs and cron files, so definitely keep that in mind. This is just one of those. If Apache is installed, you can actually do a cat var log apache2 access.log, and it's not installed on this system. However, you will get all the different IP addresses and other systems that are calling to that Apache web server. So if you're just trying to get a feel of what types of systems are interacting, that's a great file to check. And then last but not least, one of my favorites is the etc fs tab file. Administrators that want to set up a persistent network or just mount connection are actually going to put it in the fs tab. They're not supposed to attach plain text credentials to the FS tab. However, I have seen it before. So go ahead, cat that out. You may get a better idea of what systems are attached to that system. So if you're ever on an assessment, definitely go cat this file out. You're going to get a better handle on what type of network shares are mounted to this system and potentially get some credentials along the way. So that's a wrap on this video. I hope you enjoyed our look at some of the important files on a Linux system. I hope it helps in your CTFs and your red team assessments. Definitely go through this whole list, enumerate, query, just look and see what's on that system. You're definitely bound to find some good stuff.